Hi. So you want to talk about flying. Okay, we're going to talk about flying, specifically 1994, going from Florida to Alaska. But I'd like to make this a little broader than that. Why would a 34-year-old mother of three take up flying? Well, I never expected to live very long. I had childhood diseases. So I lived fast. I wanted to experience everything. And in 1978, I had my last child, and he was about 3 or 4 when, well, his father left, and I was on my own. And he was about 3 or 4 when I met a man who had 2 airplanes. And he used to fly up into Canada to sell wire to pulp mills. Pulp mills take the trees and turn them into pulp, and then they're wrapped up in a wire like a bale of hay, and then they're shipped over to paper mills or medical gauze mills or whatever, where people will then process the pulp into whatever. Then there's a variety of things that trees are. And even fabric. Some trees are made into rayon. It's kind of odd, but that's how it happens. And there's just this real simple wire that this man had been selling for many, many years by flying into small dirt, usually airports all over in Canada. And it was strange because I was very, very close to my uncle. And he was about 12 years older, 12, 14 years older than me. And he went to Vietnam. He came back with PTSD, and he was flying a U.S. Air Force airplane. He was in the Air Force like my father. And the right wing fell off at 500 feet, and he died. He was 34. I was devastated. So I decided when I was 34, I was going to take flying lessons. I had always had a problem with motion sickness. And I really hadn't been in airplanes, but Dad had always been in airplanes, and Uncle Stanley had always been in airplanes. And I just decided I was going to do it. I'm kind of bullheaded. I am bullheaded. Anyway, I went up for the first day, and I was really sick. So the second day, I went to the airport, and I said to the flight instructor, let's do nose down spins. And he said, what? I said, I have to be convinced that I can come up from that, and I think that will stop the motion sickness. I did. We did. I think it was 3 nose down spins. You go up, you level the plane off, and then you go down, and you have to recover. And I knew, because you should take ground school training before you go in an airplane to fly it. And so I did. And I knew that we should be able to recover. So we did. And I did. And I was able to fly. So I started flying, and I met this man who wanted to have someone who would go up to Canada with him and make these stops at these different pulp mills. And I thought, wow, what an adventure. I'd really be able to get some real rural flying, real out there flying. If you're going to do it, I've got tenacity. I usually dive into something, and so I did. I dived in. And it was truly amazing. I just recommend it. In fact, when I was teaching, I'd say especially to the girls, if you have a lack of confidence, there is nothing like flying. Excuse me. When you fly, unlike driving is pretty simple for most people, not everyone, but the spatial concept of where the front of the car or truck is and where the back is. And usually people have a little bit of trouble when they go from a car to a truck because it's longer in the back. But flying is a whole different thing. When you're in the truck, you're two-dimensional. You're on the ground. You're not going anywhere. You're not going to turn upside down, hopefully. You're just going to stay in that space. But when you're in an airplane, you can go. And what happens is your ears don't tell you the truth. They can get used to being like this and decide that that's the way you're supposed to be, and you're actually crooked. That's why you have a level indicator inside on your whole panel of instruments tells you whether you're level or not, because especially if you get in the clouds, and you can go like this and be flying along like this for a long time. And that can be okay, but if you go too far, it can be really bad, and you need to know if you're level or not. So, it's important to recognize that, but you also need to know where your wings are. The wings are out here. They have ailerons that move like this to make the wing go down or up. And you need to know where the propeller is. You need to know where the front is, the front end. How far out is that, and where are they? How big is it? And your back end. Now your back end is a long way back there. And you've got your rudders, which you control how you go. And you need to be able to, with your mind, you need to project yourself out there. So one of the first things that happens when you're learning how to fly is you begin to recognize that you're now bigger and you're stronger and you can go down and up, and you're not just driving, you are flying. I mean, one of the things I just loved is I love to push my foot in and slip. They called it slipping, and go sideways and just, oh God. Oh, God, you just can't imagine. The only thing better than flying is riding a horse. And we'll go into that some other time. But right now, I just want to talk to you about the joy of flying and the fear. And there's a lot of fear. Okay, because I wanted to make this trip. The trip came up after I'd done quite a bit of flying in Canada. I'd flown all over the United States, of course, because we would go to any of the pulp mills that were in the States. But the flying in Canada was a whole different thing. We carried 2 bicycles in the back so that when we landed, we could get on the bicycles and ride to the pulp mills and visit with the people and decide if they wanted to buy the wire from him or not. And then we'd take off again. Ride the bikes back and get in the airplane and go. And usually it was gravel or dirt strips that we would, that means the field that you land on. And it was exciting, really exciting. Really living life to the fullest. Oh my God, to the fullest. And what ended up happening, my father had worked after 28 years in the Air Force, he'd gone to NASA to work for 17 years as the last inspector on the Apollo and the Shuttle and the Saturn projects. And so he had a real connection with everybody there, and he knew Sally Ride. And I was a 99er, which was the 99 first lady pilots who got together, formed a group called that. And it was a lady pilots group. Anyway, I was a part of that. And Sally Ride was going to come to Alaska and meet with the 99ers. And I thought, oh my God, to meet Sally Ride, wow. Because she was a friend of my father's, because he knew all the astronauts, and I was just so thrilled. And so it was 1994. I'd been flying for about 3 years. I had my logbook all nice and filled out, just the way it was supposed to be. Had everything up to speed. I had 33901 Echo, which was a yellow and white Cessna 182. Retractable gear, so it'd be called a 182 RG, and it could carry enough fuel that we would be in pretty good shape. It was a beautiful plane. Gosh, it was just, and everything about it. I worked really hard to take care of her. She was awesome. Anyway, we took off. I'll never forget, my father was in a leg brace, knee brace. He came to see me off. And, oh God, there was a look on his face. It was so incredible because both my parents married to have 6 tall sons, and all they got was me. And so it's really weird being an only child. They had a boy after me, but he died. And so they put all their, hopes and dreams and everything. He said, ugh, you sickie to be an only child. But that day, I was special. It was really important for me because I was never special to my mother, ever, ever, ever. And I wasn't special that day either, but I was to my dad. I could see it on his face. He died 2 years later, so it was really, really, really special to think about how he came to the airport in Jacksonville, Florida, and he looked at me, and he sent me off, and it was just... So I was with I brought 2 other gals with me. Both of those were pilots. One I didn't know well at all. She was a real estate agent. And the other gal, I can't even remember what kind of work she did. But her mother married my father after my mother died. And so there was a connection, But they were both pilots. I mean, if something went really haywire, they could take over, but they didn't plan to fly. I planned to fly the whole trip. The whole trip was a total of 78 hours in the air, and off we went. So we left Florida, and it was July. It was in July of 84, and the International Geophysical Year was being held in St. Louis. So we went, and that was really special to be able to fly in and see that exhibit. And it was really, because we were going along, we went from Jacksonville out to St. Louis. And then we went through Texas. It was really, really, really hot. But when you're in the air, you're not that hot because it's cooler up there, and you're moving. It didn't go real fast, but you're moving, and it's pretty comfortable. I had oxygen. They didn't have oxygen. I was the only one with oxygen, and of course I had my headset so that I could communicate with people. Oh, I forgot to say, too, in Jacksonville, I met with a colonel, who gave me some Alaska flying lessons. What we did was, it was Jacksonville, and of course it's very different than Alaska, but he would have me simulate the fact that we would be above the cloud level, and I would have to find a hole in the clouds to go through to get down. And he had me go in angles of banks sideways as much as I'd ever done. And he did it for me as a gift. I mean, he didn't charge me anything. He just met me at the airport in Jacksonville one day, and they in the field, in the base, they allowed me to do it. And it was fabulous. I mean, it was just such an opportunity to have that lesson from him to better prepare myself for anything that might come up in Alaska, because it's much different than flying in Florida, of course. And I lived in Florida for several years. Both my parents are buried in Florida. They always loved Florida, so I had some time there. But actually, I've seen every state but Hawaii because of both being a military brat and flying and visiting all these different places. Anyway, off we went from St. Louis across Texas, and then we went up California. We stopped in California in several different times to refuel and just to stop. And so when we got up to Washington State, I called in to the airline, the air traffic control, and double-checked that everything was okay for us to go ahead. And I had studied for months before we made the trip. And I had advised both of the other women to study for months before we made the trip to make sure they had a real handle on where we were going, what we were going to be doing, how it was going to be, how the plane should act, what kind of dangers we could be into, all kinds of things like that. And so I had asked the gals if they'd studied, and they both said no. So I was like, oh boy. Anyway, so we got up to Washington, and I called into air traffic, and they cleared me. And I said, okay, gals, we've been cleared. It's clear to go. It's not instrument. It's visual flight rules, VFR they called it. Visual flight rules. There's a clearing we can go through. And I said, but remember, there's no place to land. And they said, what do you mean there's no place to land? And I said, well, the trip from Washington State up to Alaska, one of the things they told me and all the things that I researched is there's really no place to land. There's no airline strips or anything that I could land on. And but if you hit the water, you only usually last about 20 seconds before the water is so cold that you won't be able to take a breath, and so we'll die, and that will be it. And that's the way it works. And they both looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Well, that's why I told them to study, but they hadn't. Anyway, off we went. And we flew up to Ketchikan. And Ketchikan is it's really strange. It's a little space where the town is over here, and then there's water here because 99% of the planes land on the water. They have floats, and they land on the water. And over here is a little tiny airstrip, and you have to land, and then you get on a ferry, and the ferry takes you across the water. And you go into the town, and the town goes straight up. I mean, I'm not kidding you. It's like whew, straight up. You cannot believe that a town would be built on that much of an angle, but it is, and there's all these little houses going all the way up because it's not a very big space. I mean, it's pretty small. Anyway, the two other gals got really, really quiet, and I landed and got the ferry, and because I anticipated all this kind of thing, And so I had already connected to see if there was a hotel available for us, and there was, and we registered, dropped our bags off, and went to a restaurant. And the one gal had not said a word. And we sat down at the table to eat, and she ordered a martini, and so she drank it, and she ordered a second martini, and she's sitting there staring at it, and she looked up at me with this is the gal who's a real estate agent, with the strangest look on her face, and she said, there was no place to land. I said, well, yeah, that's what I told you. There's no place to land. The trip from Washington State up here to Ketchikan, there's no place to land. And she was just, I mean, from then on, she hardly ever said a word to me. I was actually, because we went through the whole weekend convention with her totally ignoring me and saying nothing to me. I never expected her to get back on the plane. But she did, and she didn't talk to me then either. So I learned from that experience that, yes, I had two female pilots with me for a female convention on female pilots, which seemed like a logical thing. And we had planned it for several months ahead to go. And I told them to study to make sure they understood what we were facing, and they didn't. So, oh well. So then what happened is that we started to come in to Anchorage, and I was flying along, and it went into instruments, which means you can't see anything. And I had my headset on. They didn't have a headset on. I had my headset on, and they cleared me to 2,500 feet. I'm sorry, they cleared me down. I was 2,500 feet below the mountaintop is where they cleared me to, because I couldn't see anything, and I was trusting the air traffic controller. And all of a sudden, there's a screaming in my ears by the air traffic controller, pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up. So I kept doing that. I did exactly as he said. I was pulling up. And finally, he told me to level off. And of course, the two of them had no idea what was really going on. And it was pretty unnerving, because I was flying along normally. And then all of a sudden, I was just pulling as far back as the yoke. That's what they call the instrument you're holding onto in an airplane. I was, because it looked like a yoke on a horse or an oxtail. Anyway, I was pulling back. And when I finally leveled off, we were cleared to go into Anchorage. And when I saw the person inside, he was white as a sheet. He said there were three of us, and there was some kind of confusion. And of course, like I said, it was instruments. You couldn't see anything. But again, the one who was real quiet was quiet again. She was angry. She was really angry. She was angry the whole weekend. But when you make a trip like that, when you plan something like that, death is possible. In fact, I received a beautiful, beautiful long letter from my daughter about if I didn't make it back. And it was incredible, because she understood, but the two gals who went with it didn't have a handle on it. And that's the kind of thing you do when you make a trip like that. Anyway, we got in, and it was a fabulous weekend. I had my picture taken with Sally Ride, and got to, visit with her, and felt the sadness when we lost her. But the whole thing is about doing something like, of course, we were the ones who came the furthest by our own plane. Jacksonville, Florida to Anchorage is a long way. There were people there from Europe but they didn't fly their own plane. But the whole adventure and the trip back was less adventuresome, because from Anchorage we went across the United States and through Canada and across. We went over to the east a ways, and then came down through North and South Dakota and back down into Florida. So it was a much less exciting, because we didn't stop places. And I mean, really, the difference between stopping in California and North Dakota, I don't mean to be insulting, but there's a big difference. And North and South Dakota is the kind of land I like. It's rustic, and California, of course, it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of houses and businesses, and it's just not who I am. I'm a rural girl. I really like to be in rural areas. But we stopped some places. It was very rural in Canada to get fuel and things like that. But and seeing the whole United States from the air is just an incredible experience. It's really because in a light plane like that, you're low. You don't have to fly at 30,000 feet, And flying over Canada, and I've flown there. As I said, I flew to pulp mills, so I've flown a lot in Canada. And Canada is, when you look down on Canada, it's just multitudes of lakes. I mean, it's just so, and it's so pristine, and gosh, it's so raw with land and trees and lakes, as opposed to buildings and buildings and concrete and buildings. You know, that's just who I am. I'm just a rural girl. I really like. I love living here. I'm not flying anymore. I mean, at 79, you don't want to be in the air unless you're. There's a gal I met who in her 70s, she started an airport in Fort Worth, Texas. God, she was awesome, but not me. No, I've got a husband to take care of, and I don't want to take that chance. And yet, I had 3 kids, and I did take the chance, but that's when I didn't think I was going to see 50. So. Life's different now. I've got a different outlook on life and a different way of approaching life. And I love going down my gravel driveway to a dirt road and then off over in there and going to a little village and shopping. And in many ways, living like people lived 100 years ago. And yet I have internet. And I can reach out. I reach out to people all over the world. And I think part of flying and myself, I mean, there's a difference. You can fly in a plane, sure. But there's a big difference when you've flown yourself. There's a level of, the feeling that I told you about reaching out to the wingtips. And I'll never forget the feeling of learning how to use the VOR, which is an instrument that has a little plane on it. And the NDB was a pointer, just like a compass, which we all know what a compass is. I mean, we've had the little compass, you hold it when you're a kid and play with it, and it points to north or close to north anyway, depending on what you're looking for. But a VOR is a different thing, and it took some time to get used to figuring out what that little plane was telling me. A lot of the instruments can be very confusing, and the whole concept of having the up and down as opposed to being just on a road is so different. And landing on gravel or dirt, you just stop, as opposed to landing on a runway where you've seen planes land and they roll for a long way. You don't do that in a light plane on the gravel or dirt. The whole experience of being up in the air like that and having that 3-dimensional opportunity is so incredibly amazing. And I recommend to anybody. I mean, I feel so strongly about it that my husband and I taught a course called Wright Flight, and it's WRIGHT. It's from the Wright brothers, and it's apparently all over the world. It's an opportunity for people to work with children, and we taught them ground school. And after they had completed, it was after school program. My husband and I worked in Mexico. And then the kids would, on the border. It was on the border between Arizona and Mexico. And then the kids would get to go out and fly. They didn't fly themselves. They got to be in a small airplane that I think there were 6 or 8 different people volunteered their planes and came and took the kids up in a ride after they'd studied ground school. And it changes people. It really changes you to be in a light plane. A big plane is exciting and can be very, very exciting and frightening when it's your first time, because it is such a different feeling. But boy, a light plane, it's just so incredibly different. You feel the vulnerability. I remember once I was flying along and the plane dropped 500 feet. Everything on the floor, the pencils, papers, everything that was loose hit the ceiling because we just dropped. I mean, you're a child of the wind. Whatever the wind and the air is doing, you're a child. You're vulnerable. And you have to pay close attention. And lots of times, like they called clear our turbulence, and that's what it means. It means it's absolutely clear. You can't see anything, and all of a sudden, blah, you're bouncing all over the place. So there's this incredible sense of always being more alert than you would even be in a car. And that's the truth, because you can fall. You can't fall in a car. You're in the car unless you fall off a cliff. You're on the road, but it's not that way in the air. And the whole sensation, I mean, people who are not religious often say they feel like they're closer to something that they don't really understand. Well, it's like your whole spirit just is so taken with the fact that there you are, and you're away from the earth, and you're free, and it's just an amazing feeling. I got to go back up a few years ago, and it was the same thing as far as being in a light plane, but boy, it's different when you've got your hands on the yoke. I got to tell you, there is just, when you know that you're the one who took off, when you know that you're the one that's going to have to bring it back down again, oh, the sensation is unbelievable. It really is. If you have any questions, just go down below and leave them in the comments, and I will answer them. I'm also available to talk to people on Zoom. I have Zoom. I do that all the time, and just let me know. And if you go down there, please check out our nonprofit. It's called Summerland, and the two of us are artists. I'm a fiber artist, and my friend is a painter and sculptor. And we've done things that represent the earth, and they are reminders to you to honor this beautiful piece of the solar system that we live on, this beautiful home that's been given to us by Mother Earth. Thank you for being here. Bye.